This podcast was recorded before recent federal policy changes impacted many of the programs discussed and may not reflect the most current information.
Welcome to How to Not Kill Your Community, a podcast from the Delaware Community Foundation. In each episode, we interview experts to explore the choices we make as Delawareans, how we spend our taxes, steward our land, build housing, and how those choices impact the places we call home. What happens if we neglect our libraries, turn away newcomers, let philanthropy fade? Most importantly, how do we not kill our communities? I'm Stuart Comstock-Gay, President and CEO of the DCF. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to How to Not Kill Your Community. And today I'm joined by two of the state's premier librarians. Yay. I'm going to introduce the two of you, and then we're going to get into the meat of the thing. So Jamar Rahming is the executive director of the Wilmington Public Library in Delaware. Under your leadership, the library has become a vibrant community hub, hosting notable figures such as Angela Davis, LeVar Burton, and Dolly Parton. In recognition of its exceptional service, the library received the 2022 National Medal for Museum and Library Services. Jamar, you yourself received the I Love My Librarian Award in 2025. Pretty cool. And your career spanning 2 decades across 8 states, including a fellowship at the Smithsonian Institution. Welcome, Jamar.
Thank you.
Jill DiPaolo is the director of the Lewis Public Library before assuming this role. Jill served as director of both the Selbyville and Milton Public Libraries and held leadership positions in outreach and technology at the Sussex County Department of Libraries. In 2022, you spearheaded the inaugural Sussex County Scripps National Spelling Bee, way cool, instrumental in securing technology grants from the Gates Foundation to enhance library services statewide. And you live in Lewis with your husband, Mike, who, by the way, also works at the Delaware Community Foundation, and your 2 children, and are very involved in the community. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Let's talk libraries.
All right.
So,
let's do it.
Libraries. Everyone always talks about how good libraries are. They're the palaces for the people. But we've got Amazon and bookstores. Why not just go with that? What happens if we don't support the libraries?
Go ahead.
Well, I would say especially in the, one thing about libraries is that we have stayed vital and vibrant, and we've stayed vital and vibrant because of our response to community needs. And you go back to the 2008 recession, libraries were busier than ever. We sustained our communities during one of the worst financial crises in American history by providing job assistance, by providing free and affordable recreation for families who were economically, oppressed at the time. You look at the last epidemic we had, which was COVID-19. The library was a space where people went and got their vaccine shots. They got information we connected them to resources. We provided free and affordable programming. And so our role is we're the social, intellectual, and recreational hub of the community. And so I would say community sustenance, community building, and cultural preservation is the reason why we need public libraries today.
Jill?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with everything you just said, Jamar. Mm-hmm. And I would say, on top of that, people need a space to exist and to explore their creativity. And, there's no loitering in a public library, which is something that you can't say for really any other space.
And let me be clear, you're not saying there's a no loitering sign. It's like there's no way to loiter because everybody's welcome.
That's exactly right. Yes, that's right. Just to be clear, everyone's welcome, and everyone's welcome to spend as long as they want without spending a dime. And that might be that you do want to explore the books and the resources, or that might be that you're just looking for a place to sit and be quiet and shut your eyes. And that's what that space provides. It also gives a sense of connection and growth. And at the end of the day, we're all just looking for we're all just looking for that meaning and connection in our libraries, and that's not something Amazon could ever give you.
In a climate that is more socially polarized than ever before, the library is, as a community connector, we're one of the few places that encourages and inspires social cohesion. The libraries are for everybody, regardless of your social economic class, your race, wherever you come from. We provide something for everybody, and I think that it's social cohesion and building bridges. Those are the things that will stabilize our democracy, and those are things that will derail this trajectory of civilization spiraling out of control.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. You beat me to it, so I appreciate that. And we'll circle back to that. Let me turn to, there's some threats on the horizon for libraries right now. And on the budget for cuts, the Institute for Museum and Library Services. And last I read, it was projected that half of the staff at that department would be eliminated, and money along with it. How concerning is that to both of you?
It's concerning. It doesn't, libraries are agile. And it doesn't mean that's the end of our local public libraries. We, at the end of the day, we're serving our local communities. And our communities, they understand the value of having a community center and a space for everyone to gather and to share. But the fact that our nation as a whole doesn't see that value is a problem, and that's what's most concerning to me. I guess I could add that, funding is necessary, right? I mean, you can't keep your doors open. You can't operate a building without funding. In Delaware, that funding is funneled through the Division of Libraries, and the Division of Libraries pays for using that IMLS funding an extraordinary amount of services, including our social services navigators that are in our libraries. It includes the fact that we have a courier service that runs up and down the state. So if Wilmington Library has something that interests you living in Lewis, you can merely, with a few taps of the button, bring down that item, and there it is in Lewis a few days later. That's provided by IMLS money, including, our summer library reading program. All of these things are funded by that money. So we will see a loss.
Yeah.
Well, it's a microcosm of understanding macro problem that we're having, and that is this is just a manifestation of a colossal threat to our democracy, because IMLS being cut, it was a unilateral decision. It was something that the president decided to do swiftly and abruptly. The Trump administration attempted to cut IMLS during his last administration, and this was not part of an executive order. This was just part of the budget process, and it was blocked by Congress.
I want to attach two things. One is libraries as third spaces, and the idea of third spaces you both know, but people may not. The idea, Tracy Kidder wrote about this many years ago, saying you have your home life, you have your school or workplace life, and we need another place. Whether it's the old neighborhood bar or whether it's hanging out wherever, bowling alleys, and libraries have become a third place a lot. I want to attach that to this idea that multiple different kinds of people come into the library at the same time and interact and start to, what I'll say, rebuild connections that they don't have. Can you tie those together, either of you? And Jill, why don't you start?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about that often in library spaces. We, public libraries, at our core, we meet people where they are, and we meet them with dignity and respect. So you may be walking into a public library, not sure where you're sleeping that night, or, with insecurity as far as food is concerned. Or you might be walking into the public library with 2 PhDs under your belt and ready to conquer your next business, whatever it might be. And we meet everybody at every aspect along the way where they are. And it brings everybody together in a way that they otherwise might be. There's so much divisiveness in our country right now and in our communities, and a public library is a space that is open and accessible and safe for everybody, and that's something really special that you can't find anywhere else in your community. Meeting everybody where they are with dignity and respect is something that's hard to find.
Yeah. You want to speak to that?
Well, we've hosted, one thing that we have attempted to do is to elevate the arts and the humanities, because that's just something that everybody agrees upon. We strive to, be above the political fray and be, one of the few things that everybody, agrees upon. And so when we've had, events, and we've hosted people like LeVar Burton and Dennis Rodman, and this past we had Al Roker, and we had a few others, and we had people that came to our space of, again, all races, all socioeconomic statuses, and we had people in every zip code of Wilmington, and we had people that traveled from out of state. So again, the work that we're doing, it builds bridges, and it really exposes, it challenges this narrative of Democrat versus, Republican. It exposes the fact that we have more in common than different, and that we all really want the same things. We want safe communities, safe schools. We want to earn a living. We want to put gas in our cars. We just disagree with the procession on how to get there.
Yeah.
And just to tack on to something
Please.
you just said, I think it's so important to just really impress upon the fact that the arts and literature and creating, and that creativity and that aspect, they bring people together, and they really do. It sees no bounds. These are the passions that bring people together in community, despite differences, despite misunderstandings. And I think it's really important that libraries continue to provide that type of culture.
One of the things I think about the differences are that it often gets painted as it's all about partisan differences. It's all kinds of differences.
It's all differences.
And we have, and yet, to your point, Jamar, we all carry some of the same principles inside of us, even if we're of different education levels, or different races, or different urban, rural, suburban, or different partisanship, or religious, non-religious. But there's still this core that we share together, and that's something you both can work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I just want to call back to the last time I talked with you, Jamar, a few years ago on the podcast, and I just have to say, because I loved it so much, that you say part of my job is to bring the world to Wilmington.
Yes.
And just say a bit about that, because it's such a fabulous concept for a library.
Well, I think libraries are all about expanding worldviews and stimulating, and enhancing the intellectual, fitness of our constituents. And we, in Wilmington, we've discovered that we have a high volume of people who have never left the city limits. They've never traveled to Philadelphia, which is, 25 miles away. And so with Wilmington being, Wilmington's a great city. I love Wilmington, but the world is so much bigger than Wilmington. And if Wilmington is all that you know, and the only thing that you know, that's a very parochial and limited existence. And so we have made it our mission to do our best to bring since our people are not leaving, to bring the world to them through innovation, creativity, and programming.
Yeah, and of course, your community is a very different community. A lot of your community has lived all over the world, but yet you're still bringing people in to share experiences and new education.
Yes, because not everyone in Lewis is from another place, too. And even that, just bringing people together in one place together to share their interests. People are meeting each other. We recently started a millennial program where we do get a little pushback about that.
What are millennials? Kidding.
Well, we found, these book clubs we started, it's a Pints and Pages, and we gather millennials in that way, and they have a cookbook club called Simmer Down where they meet for game night. But we're finding that a lot of these millennials, there is no other way in their lives to actually meet friends as an adult. You go to work, you come home, and if you don't have children, or there's not another connection in your life, and We've had groups of millennials now that have become friends. They've started new friends groups based on the programming at the library. They've made plans together. They're going out to dinner together. They're actually genuinely becoming friends. They're developing real friendships.
That's awesome. I want to switch to one of the, I don't know if it's a controversial topic, but a topic that other places controversial in libraries, and that is censorship. And I know that, we've talked about this. Libraries aren't just about books anymore, and in some ways it may be not the most important thing at all. But book banning and censorship of books is a big issue in the national debate. How does that play out for you all? Does it come up, or do you just say that's not a thing I have to deal with? And Jamar, maybe you start this time.
Well, the first thing I think censorship and book banning is it's a symptom of a much broader problem, because the people who are out here banning books, they're banning books, many of them that they've never even read. They're taking isolated quotes out of a book, and they go on this mission to ban the book, and they haven't read the book. And so this book banning thing is a symptom of the functional illiteracy epidemic that we have in our nation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that statement. I mean, just the fact that, the less you read, the more you just take at face value. And when you're doing just the typical scroll and you're not going any further and you're just believing what you see at first sight, and you're not actually taking those steps to go further and delve deeper and to really form your own opinion, which only happens with reading. And it only happens with reading what you're not familiar with. I mean, books are your windows and your mirrors. They show you other people.
Right, that is a big thing, because all of our attention spans are shorter. We know that. Research shows your attention span shorter, yours is, mine is. And the video nature of a lot of information sharing, the quick hit nature of social media, we don't spend the time to really dive deep into the books. So how do you encourage people to say, this is going to be good for you? You don't want to make it broccoli, but how do you make it so they say, I get it, the idea of reading is something that's valuable?
So I just want to take that first, because our children's librarian, Jen Noonan, who is amazing and fabulous, but she always says, it doesn't matter what you're reading. There is, to every book, their reader, to every reader, their book. And if a kid is interested in a graphic novel, read that graphic novel. If you read the newspaper, if you're reading a magazine article, you're reading. You're taking that time to read. You're moving your mind at a slower pace. And I mean, studies have been done that show reading is almost putting you into a meditative state. That's powerful. There's power in having more peace and calm in your life.
Jamar, you want to speak to that?
Well, I concur with my colleague, wholeheartedly with my colleague's sentiments. And I think you said something very profound when you mentioned your children's library. And I think we have to start with children and make literacy and reading a part of the culture and part of their value system. And one thing that's great about the state of Delaware, we have, Dolly Parton's, imagination library here. So anybody in the state of Delaware, any kid can get a free book each month. And also, I think just me and the city of Wilmington serving, my service area is 70%, African American. So it's incumbent upon, me to infuse my work with cultural competency and make sure that kids are, kids like to read things that are relatable. They like to see themselves, in the book and we did a barbershop books initiative several years ago, and we set up pocket libraries and barbershops, but the books were curated, the curation was done by kids. We found books that kids wanted to read, and the books, they were with the main characters, were belching and flatulating and observing no kind of propriety or decorum.
But that's the best kind of book, right? I mean, especially for a kid.
You're 8 years old.
And so we have to, I think we have to capture their attention. I think with reading is that for most of us growing up, I mean, reading was done as a punishment, and it was confined to the pedagogical system. It was not something that was just part of our culture, part of our value, and it wasn't something that was exciting and fun. And so our work as librarians is to ignite that.
I think, and I would say that I think it still is. Reading is still considered a bit of a punishment. I mean, your homework is read 30 minutes, and they're timing how long kiddos are reading. I mean, my daughter gets the same thing, and I'm like, listen.
So, Jamar and Jill, I know we have to wrap up here, but if we ignore the libraries, we do it at the expense of understanding the world, of coming together as community, as supporting people who have a different perspective in the community.
Well, and most importantly, if we don't support the public library, we are investing in the destabilization of democracy.
Yes.
And that's something that's something that we cherish and value, and that's what makes us Americans.
Absolutely. The public library is a pillar of democracy.
Jill and Jamar, thanks so much for joining us today. And if people want to come visit your libraries, I urge it, or visit any of your libraries and find out how you can get involved.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
How to Not Kill Your Community is a podcast written and produced by the Delaware Community Foundation. Thank you to our producers at 1440 Film Company in Wilmington. The Delaware Community Foundation, DCF, stands at the intersection of generosity and community transformation. As experts in community need, we guide individuals and organizations to opportunities that impact causes they care about the most. We manage charitable funds, distribute scholarships, advise donors, and grant to nonprofits, providing leadership to cultivate the future of philanthropy in Delaware. Visit us at delcf.org for more information.